Hey there, Balanced Lady Bosses. I'm so glad to be joined by whoever's tuning in today, whether you're listening or you're watching the episode on YouTube. I'm really happy that you've chosen to share time and space with me. And I'm in the midst of my makeshift studio. For those of you who are listening, I have been transitioning to full-time entrepreneur over the last, it's like been 5 weeks now. And I decided that my basement was going to become my office slash studio. And truthfully, guys, it's really been a major challenge getting this space set up. And that, in and of itself, I have to do a whole separate conversation about what not having a place that feels like your own, that is neat and tidy, like what that feels like as a woman. I don't know if the guys have a different feeling about it, but I certainly do. Anywho, today's conversation is coming on the heels of Mother's Day. And actually, today, the day I'm recording this epic, is actually Mother's Day. And originally I had planned to have a Mother's Day special go out before Mother's Day, but I wanted to take a step back and really kind of soak up the experience that I was having in this entire week leading up to Mother's Day. And I wanted to share from a place of all the different labels that I found myself wearing as I approached the day, and certainly on the day itself. And just the way that as women we tend to step into labels. Sometimes we step into them willingly, like the label of wife or the label of daughter or sister. Other time, and when I say willingly, you're either welcoming it or it's just a natural part of the flow. Or sometimes you step into these labels unknowingly, or without any preparation, like for some of us who didn't plan motherhood. Or in other instances, you step into labels that people ascribe to you, things, names that people latch on to based on how they see your personality unfolding. Oh, she's pretty, or oh, she's smart, or she's a boss mom, or yeah, man, she's really good at whatever else other label they can ascribe to you. And many times what happens is we lose ourselves in those labels. We lose the true connection with who we are as women, as human beings. And oftentimes, those labels take over, and we get so caught up in meeting the demands that the different labels bring to your daily life, or disappointing people because you're not meeting the labels that they have put on you, that it can create quite a bit of stress, overwhelm, and burnout. And as you are listening or watching this right now, you may be thinking, boy, you're so right, Stacey. What are some of the labels that people have placed on you that have become either somewhat of a burden, or have created the sense of overwhelm, or even not enoughness, right? So I want to talk about all the labels we wear, from being mom to being friend, being best friend, being sister, being employee of the year, being a boss, lady boss, got it all together, right? I want to talk about how those labels can challenge us, how they can create opportunities for us, and how we can navigate ways to make sure that these labels are not creating overwhelm, stress, and toxic relationships for us. So, the first place that we're going to start is with identifying the different kinds of labels that you may either have given to yourself or somebody else has given to you. And truthfully, a lot of the times when you are given labels, it's because when you're giving labels to yourself, it's because somewhere along the line, somebody made you believe something about yourself, either because they were calling you a particular thing, or because you overheard somebody saying something, or any combination of those two, right? So the first thing we're going to do is I want you to maybe identify with if you've heard any of these kinds of descriptions that have been made about you. And the truth is, guys, that labels are used as ways to identify people. That's ultimate. I mean, it's like an address, right? Or any other kind of piece of clothing. You look at the label so you can see the size and you can see how to take care of it. And so identification through labeling became somewhat of a norm, or has become somewhat of a norm. The challenge that we're having, however, is that this norm can also be damaging. Case in point, yours truly. So I'm going to start off with some of the labels that I have been ascribed, whether it is because I heard it from somebody, whether in passing or somebody called me that directly. And then some of the things that I hear in my head, where I am the person that's actually calling myself these things. So, of course, I'm a mom. I've heard boss mom, definitely boss lady, definitely boss. I've heard intimidating. Yes, I was actually really surprised when I heard the intimidating one, and I've actually heard intimidating a couple times. So that was one that's actually a bit more popular than I thought. I've also heard confident. In my later years, I think I started to listen out for beautiful and pretty. When I was younger, oh my gosh, like nobody couldn't tell me that I wasn't just this ugly duckling, because I had uncles that would tell me that my nose is big and my this and my that and I'm ugly. So I actually grew up as a little girl. I didn't think I was a pretty girl because I had heard all these different things. And I don't remember hearing enough of other people actually saying though any positive kind of things to me. So I think when I look back, like I may have carried those kind of labels that were not necessarily complimentary. I think I carried those, I internalized that a lot, and made sure that I was accentuating the sides of me that were beautiful. So I had a nice little figure, nice little shape. I'm going to wear the tight up clothes because I want to hear something other than what I had come to believe about myself based on what some family member may have said in jest or in teasing, right? So some other labels that you may hear people saying, they may call it physical, from a physical perspective. You may hear, oh Lord, you're fatty. Oh, you're skinny, man, you can't eat some food. And let me just say to you guys, if you're watching and you are not Jamaican, Jamaicans in particular, I have found, have a way to describe your physical attributes. They will pick out the thing that is probably the most uncomfortable description, and that is what I'm going to label you with, right? I have heard grandmothers who shall remain nameless, always, if somebody have a little bit of weight on them, large fatty, it's just like automatically you get that label put on, right? Or if you don't have on enough weight. I remember when I had cancer and I was really skinny, guys. I was down to like 90 odd pounds, because that's one of the things that happens for some people, a lot of people, when you get cancer, is that you lose a lot of weight, right? And remember, I tell you, the amount of skinniness I hear, and if I can't get somebody can't feed her, what are you eating? It's like, and persons don't really know what could be actually going on in your life, why you don't necessarily have on the amount of weight that they think you need to have on. All right. Some other ones you may have heard: tall, short, pretty or ugly. Definitely we hear that one, especially with the dawn of social media and all things. Insta girls aren't usually what would anyone would consider not pretty, right? If you're succeeding, it's because you qualify as beautiful. Look at all the beautiful people, right? Sexy or hot, that's another, definitely another one. MILF, that's a new one for me of late. I guess I'm at that mature stage now. I've gotten MILF recently. If you're not talking about the physical attributes, you can maybe talk about intellect. Intellect is an interesting one because I think people welcome the intellect ones, or actually anything that is deemed as positive, you'll welcome it. So you want to hear that you're pretty. You also want to hear that you're smart, right? So smart versus, boy, you don't have no sense. Oh my gosh, you're so fool. Why are you so stupid? Like, like it's just, and we take these things for granted, guys. We take it for granted that we say these things to people, and not really understand how they land, how people receive what we are saying. So the words pretty or ugly may not occur to you in any way, but for some persons, it could be too much. I know for a fact that you have women who are actually quite beautiful, very catching to the eye, very attractive to the eye, who don't like it. They don't like when people just harp on their beauty because it's like, oh, all I am is a pretty face. Okay, so there are sides to the entire story. Let's continue. So intellect is where we were. We were talking about whether somebody said, oh, you're so smart, the straight A student. Oh my gosh, I just love how you're always getting these great grades. The moment that that person doesn't get a straight A or excel at work, and you actually, whether you know it or not, that they're not excelling, it immediately creates a reaction within them because they're so used to now hearing how amazingly smart they are, hearing how they're getting these straight A's, and then, ta ta ta, oh my gosh, we have an issue because I haven't gotten that A, or I didn't win that award for being the best salesperson, and now I am less than. And that stuff, it messes with your head, right? Stupid or worthless or useless, oh, them don't have no ambition. Okay? You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, right? So intellect is another way that people will choose to label you, especially when you're in institutions like schools and churches and at work, right? And then of course, you have the spiritual labels, oh, you're ungodly. Oh no, you're Christian. And so then immediately it becomes good versus bad. Oh, yes, that one, evil, evil, right? So we have to kind of recognize, guys, first of all, what a label is. So yes, it is identification, and it is oftentimes viewed as something that you can't change. And so for me, I think because when I was little, I was growing up and hearing all of the words about my features, and they weren't necessarily complimentary words. I think in my head it got stuck that, okay, your face isn't pretty, so you have to do something to attract somebody into your life. Do something else because that other girl over there is pretty, right? And I feel that even looking at myself in the mirror, because I was hearing this in my head from whoever put it in there, said it maybe in passing, in jest, but not realizing how that was affecting me as a little girl. I think when I looked at myself in the mirror, I wasn't seeing somebody that was pretty in my mind. The things that the labels that I had put on for what a pretty person is supposed to look like. What does beautiful actually mean, right? And labels, usually when you think it's either something that you can't change, like I've just said, or it's either this or that. For example, if one person says that you're fat, then that is just it. You find yourself obsessing over the fact that you have on too much weight, or you have on weight that somebody else don't approve of, which means that you are definitely fat. There is no like in between. You couldn't be just the right weight because they've said you're fat. So it's something like there is no in between. It's either you are this or you are that. So if you're not smart, that means you're automatically stupid, or that means that you're automatically incapable of doing whatever smart means you can do, right? And so we really have to be careful about not just how we spit out labels out of our mouths, but also how we apply labels to ourselves. I know for me, I have had to do a lot of work on my inner perception of my beauty. I mean, like a lot of work, guys. Mirror work, standing, affirming myself, talking all the things, which we'll talk about in a second when we get to, how to move beyond labels that you've given yourself or that other people have given you. But I've had to do some work to manage my headspace about how I was thinking about myself just based on other people's interpretation of me, right? Now, there is another aspect of labeling, which is the last one that I'll talk about, so that you can kind of start to see yourself in it. And this is how we spend our time or how we exist as adults. So like mom is an example. It's right on the heels of Mother's Day. If you're a mom entrepreneur, that's supposed to mean that you're a mom who's also running her own business. Maybe it is that you're a mom boss or a boss mom. Boss mom is one that I actually got, somebody gave me that as a gift one time. The things that you put on your desk, Usually it's like a nameplate that you put on your desk. I have a desk nameplate at my office, where my office was, that actually says Boss Mom, because they're like, I'm always holding it down at work, in the office, and at the same time, I'm holding it down at home. At the time, I was a single mother with 3 children, and I'm bossing it, right? And in many ways, I felt a lot of pride around being boss mom, whereas my kids were like, you work too much, lady. They're like, it feels like I'm in a meeting with you as opposed to connecting with my mother. So boss mom became more negative than positive. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's just like, what label is going to work for me? You know, what label is going to actually have me feeling comfortable with myself? Other labels that persons will ascribe to you are things like alcoholic. And alcoholism is a way to identify when a person is drinking too much, or is drinking in a way that does not serve their best selves. It could actually be very dangerous for their health, very dangerous for other people. But what I find interesting, even about labeling addiction, is that you have honorable addictions, like a workaholic. If you're a workaholic, it's not as big a deal. It's almost like this noble thing. It's a noble addiction, right? Versus somebody who's an alcoholic. It's like, oh my gosh, stay away from that person. Watch out. They better not get behind the wheel. And I believe that any aholic, you might have serious issues that you need to be checking out, because you could be ultimately in the long term hurting yourself and hurting others, right? So, so those are some of the ways that people label you, or you may find yourself labeling yourself. And if you can find yourself or see yourself in any of those things, I would love for you to just drop a note in the comments and let me know which one of these different labels came up for you. Just drop a note in the comments, guys. I'd love to hear from you. And guys, if you are not yet, if you're just listening and not following the YouTube channel where I actually have the videos for these podcasts up, please go ahead and follow me on YouTube. Just look for Stacey Hines, and you can subscribe to my page, The Balanced Lady Boss. And there, every week when we do the podcast, we also have, for the most part, we also have the video recording, so that I can actually hear from you, and you can tell me that you will listen to the podcast. I'd love to hear from you on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe to that. All right. So now let's talk about this thing. Now that you've been able to identify the ways that people may label you, and I recommend it, guys. This is what I had to do for myself. Okay. And some of you may be out there struggling with labels, and you don't even realize what is triggering you. But through this conversation, maybe you'll get a better understanding of what could be coming up for you with labeling, right? So another thing that you want to think about as you start to look at, what triggers me. You want to think about, how can I reflect on where I may have labels being placed on me that are not things that align with who I want to be. So this is something that is also a really good exercise to do in general. Let's say, for example, a lot of times you hear people saying the same thing. So they may be saying, boy, you really don't know how to talk to people. And you hear that over and over again. Possibly you hear, oh gosh, you're such a narcissist. And you're not really sure what narcissist means, but it don't sound good. And even though you haven't looked it up, you haven't Googled it, you've decided that, what does that mean? I'm ignoring that. That doesn't have anything to do with me, right? Sometimes it is really good to actually reflect on what you're hearing, because it doesn't mean, if a label is negative, it doesn't mean that it's not valuable for you to reflect on. And when I say reflect, I do not mean sit down and obsess, just let your mind run off into the sunset with you. What I mean is that you are going to be intentional about seeing how you can learn from this thing that people keep saying about you, that people keep calling you. We can use one of the physical ones, right? Let's say, for example, somebody keeps talking to you about being fat. They're saying, Lord, you're fatty. Oh, you put on weight recently? What you been eating? Maybe you hear it, by the wayside. And this is actually something that I feel, especially since I've been on the other end of the scale where people would call me skinny all the time. I think that physical attributes is one of the most damaging ways that people place labels on others, and it's one of the most damaging ways that we place labels on ourselves, right? So why don't you sit down and make a list of all the different things that you hear that people say about you or that you find yourself saying about yourself? Make a list. So if fat is on there, write it down. If skinny is on there, write down overweight, whatever it is. And write down all the other attributes as well. The things that you may hear that make you feel good. So not just the things that make you feel bad, but do a proper reflection and be intentional about it, right? And that's the difference between, taking a deliberate step towards changing or shifting something, transforming something that you're having a bad relationship with, versus the default step, which is letting it running around in your head and create one bag of anxiety and upset. So be intentional about this reflection. Sit down, write down the different things that you've either heard people calling you or you hear running around in your head. And then put an asterisk beside the ones that don't make you feel good. They make your stomach kind of churn up and you don't feel so right. Okay? And when you make the list of when you do the asterisk beside the things that don't make you feel good, I want you to spend some time and ask yourself, do I feel this is true about me? Ask yourself that question. And don't get into try to avoid or try to recognize, I'd say, when you hear the inner voice kind of beating you up about it, right? Because as you are reflecting, you want to see the energy that goes along with the different labels that you're looking at. So for me, for a long time, whenever I would hear skinny, it made me feel like I was still sick with cancer. Skinny for me became you are not well. And even in the picture that is behind me, guys, when you look at that picture, I think I was probably just coming back because you can literally see, my collarbones. And you can look at my hand. You can see that, it was really like compared to now, there was no fat there. There was just literally just bone. There was a lot. I had lost a lot of weight when I did this photo shoot for the book. And the truth is that I was not in a good relationship with my body in general. I was relearning how to take care of my body and how to serve its needs, how to listen to what my body was asking for. And so I invite you to look at the labels about your physical self that don't make you feel good and do some mirror work around it. What does mirror work look like? It looks like standing in the mirror and facing yourself and saying, I love you, body. What do you need? Let me hear from you, and really listening into what your body is saying. And guys, for those of you who are out there like, what she said, listen into the body. Yes, your body is always telling you what it needs. So for example, right now, my neck and my shoulder are really aching me. And what that usually means for me is that I need to rest. And yet here I am doing a podcast, okay? It usually means I need to rest, or it means that something happened in my day that made me feel a little bit stressed out that I am not dealing with in a healthy way, right? And so your body's always telling you things. You have headaches all the time. What does that mean? It may mean that, your sight, maybe you need eyeglasses, or you're not eating things that are supporting your head health, or there may be something going on in your brain. Like your body is constantly saying things to you. You just have to take the time to listen. So similarly, when you get these labels, somebody's calling you fat, somebody's calling you skinny, have a real conversation with yourself. Is my body at its healthiest? Do I feel good about how I am treating my body? Do I feel good about the way that I am appearing to myself? And if you feel good about it, then how can I assert that? How can I make sure that I'm being the best self, putting my best foot forward? What are some of the things, some of the habits that I can do to make sure I'm taking care of my body in its current state? I think one of the things that I really learned from having a critical illness and going through physical changes is especially coming from a place where I used to get a lot of admiration from my body. Oh, girl, your stomach is so flat. Girl, oh, look at you. You got a nice figure. Like I'd get all these compliments, and then shifting to, having my breast removed. It's like, and you have scars and you're maga, you're down to 90 pounds when really your best weight based on doctors is 125 to 130. It really had me looking at myself and feeling less than. And truthfully, when I started to work on my wellness, I was really doing a lot of self care work. I was doing a lot of work on what I was putting in my body, eating healthier, learning about food and learning about the way that food affects my body. And so I started to take better care of myself. Not so much about trying to get to the ideal number, but just about making sure that I could feel good about myself. Because when you feel good about yourself, guys, you always show up to the world reflecting that energy beyond you. So the reflection piece and the energy piece is really important. One of the ways that you can actually support yourself with the good vibrations and the good energy is that when you make your label list and you put an asterisk beside the ones that don't make you feel good, you draw a line through it and right beside it what you want to replace that label with. Who am I becoming? Choose for yourself who you are becoming. If it is that you have more weight on your physical body than you currently desire, then choose for yourself that you're going to be the healthiest version of you, even with extra weight on your body. You're going to be the healthiest version of you. You're going to do the things that you know you're supposed to do to support your body, even at a heavier size than may be ideal for your body type. And that looks like positive affirmations. That looks like exercise. That looks like putting into your body the things that you know work well for you, right? Similarly, if you have a label that is related to intellect, whether it is that you don't feel like you're smart enough, or you're feeling a lot of pressure because everybody else around you is saying how smart you are, but deep down you know that, boy, I just feel so much pressure. It's like I have to kill myself in order to remain up to everybody else's level. Maybe I don't want to be this A+ student all the time because I stress out to have to study to be that person. Or maybe I don't want to be the top sales executive. Maybe I just want to do a really good job and not work 16-hour days just so I can get the applause and the accolades, or not feel like I'm letting other people down, right? So I think there are opportunities for you to really choose who you want to be. And that looks like positively affirming yourself against who you are going to become. So think about, who do I want to be? I want to be the best version of myself. It doesn't mean that it has to be straight A's. It just means I want to accept me for putting my best foot forward and doing the best that I can without overwhelm and stress and burnout, right? So we talked about a couple of ways to shift out of the negative impact of labeling. So reflection, reflecting deliberately, really being intentional about identifying where your triggers are coming up so that you can look at the triggers face to face. You have to face it to fix it, guys. I say it all the time. If you're really trying to transform anything externally, anything that you're experiencing in your life, even in relationships that you have to first transform yourself inside. Your mind has to be aligned with what it is you are becoming. If it is you have a relationship that you're challenged by and you just can't take the person, and maybe it is that you want to create a positive relationship, or you don't want to have a relationship with the person at all, start to affirm what that looks like. I want to have relationships with people who are aligned with my values, or I have relationships with people who are aligned with my values. I embrace all the persons in my life who are not toxic. I embrace all the people in my life who fill me up with the feelings of goodness. So you start to affirm the things that you want instead of focusing and worrying and spiraling around the things that you don't want. What you focus on expands. All right. So I hope that this conversation around labels is something that maybe came in a timely moment for many of us who are out there and who are moms. And for me, I think I went through many different feelings of labels with the mother label, right? When I got my first son, I was not married when I got pregnant with my first son, and I was devastated because I didn't want to be labeled as a single mother or somebody who got pregnant out of wedlock. because at the time I had this very religious belief of marriage, and I was going to hell. Oh my gosh, my life is over because I got pregnant out of wedlock and all of the different things. And then, guys, on the flip side of that, I'm married, and then I'm at a place where I'm now okay. I've decided I'm going to file for divorce because this marriage is not healthy for me. And then it was, oh my gosh, no, I'm going to be a divorced mom, and no, I'm going to have this label of with different names. Why are your children aren't you have your children have a different last name than your. You know what I'm talking about. Guys, if you're out there, you know what I'm talking about, right? And then there are lots of other ways that you think about things, and because you're thinking about them in that way, you just create so much anger inside yourself, and you create so much dissatisfaction with life, and you take it out on other people. You don't even realize it sometimes how you're taking out your own dissatisfaction with the labels that either you've given yourself or other people have given you, and the thoughts that you make up in your head about those labels. You don't even realize how that is impacting your relationship with those around you. So I really hope that whatever it is, the different labels that you've written down on your reflections list, your label reflections list, that you're able to pull out the things that don't make you feel good and redefine that for yourself. Choose who you will be. Choose the label that you will define for yourself. And don't be afraid to have the conversation with people when they're calling you things or ascribing labels to you that are not true, right? Oh, you're stupid. You have no sense. Why do you say that? I don't appreciate being called that I'm stupid. I'm actually really smart. There are lots of things that I'm good at that you may not be familiar with, and that's okay, right? Speak up for yourself, speak life into yourself, and trust that no matter what it is that somebody else is saying about you, that you will put within yourself, within your mind, the labels that make you feel empowered and allow you to rise to that next level of who it is that you are becoming. Right? So I hope this episode was helpful for somebody today as you're going out into this world this week, and that you will continue to just be your best self and put your best foot forward. Thanks for joining another epic of the Balanced Lady Boss Show, guys, and I'll see you next week for another awesome conversation. Take care, everybody.